hey there guys, it's Corinna from Shared Legacy Farms. I am back. Sorry that it's a little bit late. I was having some technical difficulties, had to switch to my iPad real quick. And let me see if I can see myself now on a page. Yes, there I am. Awesome. So thanks for being patient with me. Hope you guys are doing well. I know at least out here in Northwest Ohio, it's starting to get a little bit warmer. And I know many of you have been struggling with the snow and the cold temps. So here's to spring actually starting. Let me know if you're here, and I want to invite you to share your questions during this training. I'm going to try and do a better job of paying attention to when they come up here. I'll try to answer them live as we go through today's broadcast. Today I'm going to be covering a topic that several of you have been asking about for a while now, and I'm just now getting to it. There's just so many things that I want to share with you, but I think it's time to start talking about today's topic, which is all about building your army of brand ambassadors. Okay, so I always like to say that the best marketers are your own customers. And if you can create an army of customers who will talk you up and share your brand and tell people about your CSA, consistent lead generation is going to be so much easier for you, and it's going to be free. So I just want to ask you right now, what is your biggest source of lead generation? And if you could share, I know there's just going to be a few of you live when we do this broadcast, but if you could just share with me, where do you get the biggest referrals from? Is it through Google? Is it through another search engine of some sort? Is it from other customers? I would be curious to see what your response is. And if you're watching this later on, go ahead and put your answer in the comments right now too. Where do you get, what's your biggest source of lead generation? Because I would suspect that for most of the established CSAs who've been around, who are doing what I would say well, who have a nice retention rate, I am guessing that their answer to that question would be like mine, which is referrals. Definitely referrals. Let me see if any of you guys have answered that question or not. No, not yet. But I'm guessing that the response would be getting referrals from other customers. That is usually the number one place where new customers come from. And that is what I want to talk to you about today, because if you can harness the power of your current customer base, if you can figure out how to make that behavior happen in your customers, it is going to really help you sell your CSA shares in the future, and you won't have to work so hard to find new leads. So I'm going to pull out this lovely little picture. I think I literally take this for every training and show it to you. Let me just stick it in front of my face, okay? So this is the customer value journey that's all mapped out. You can see it in one of my trainings that's all about the customer value journey. It's my favorite one. And if you notice at the top of the customer value journey, way up here in the promote stage, is this showing backwards for you? It probably is. Oh well. This is where we want to take people, right? So they start out here at the very bottom at awareness, and they move their way up, and they eventually end up in the advocate and in the promoter stage. So how do you get people into that nirvana land, right? You move people from just kind of knowing about you to subscribing, giving you their contact information. Maybe they make an initial purchase, get to know you, then they buy your flagship item, they get really excited about it, they love it, and now they want to talk about it, they want to advocate for you, they want to promote you. Okay, so this is the natural progression of people who move through any brand, okay, not just farms. This is a model that works for all businesses. And so if we're aware of how customers will move through the journey, we can actually engineer a process to make them more likely to get up there into that top corner, right? And that is the nirvana of marketing. You want your people there because then you don't have to work so hard to market. Lori, hey Lori, I'm glad you're here. Word of mouth, Facebook, Every Door Direct Mail, and localharvest.com. Yep, Okay, awesome. I don't really like every door direct mail, but that's, I only did it once. And gosh, I still remember it was a pain in the butt, like sorting it all out on the ground and making piles and putting them in the right zip codes. Cool, but word of mouth is definitely up there in Facebook. Cool, thanks for sharing that, Lori. So today, I want to ask us, how do you build that customer journey? How do you engineer the process so that your customers do get to that ultimate state of brand ambassador, of promoter stage, right? And in my experience, I'll be honest, this takes time. This is not something that you're going to be able to go activate next week and you're immediately going to start seeing a difference. It does take a year or two, but if you put these strategies and mechanisms in place now, the payoff is going to be awesome in a couple of years, all right? So within the scope of this label of promoters, there are kind of two levels, all right? So I kind of break them down into people that I would call super users, all right? These are the people that will talk about your farm and about your CSA without a lot of prompting. They don't need you to coach them or remind them or give them all these tools. They'll just do it naturally. They are just so geeked about this product, and they can't help talking about it. And a lot of times, these will be people that are kind of hardcore foodies that just, it's not hard to convince them to love your product. They had a superstar experience with you and they're just like, brah, right? And it's just exploding out of them. Then there's sort of this other category of promoter, which I couldn't really think of a name. They're like basic, regular promoters, okay? These are people who are willing to talk about your farm, who would say good things about you, but they need a little bit of prompting. They need to be reminded that they can do this. They need some kind of help and tool to make it more likely to happen, okay? So I just want to make you aware that there are kind of two levels of people, in my experience, who fall into this promoter category. And so you can't just assume that promoters are going to be super users, that they're just going to know what to say and how to talk about your farm. You have to also provide tools and resources and a process for those people who fall into that other category of just kind of basic, regular promoters. All right? So we're going to talk about, probably mostly about those people that I would say fall into the basic and regular category of promoter. That's what today's training is really going to be focusing on, to help you help them to talk about your farm. So how do you create a promoter? How do you get them into that top corner? I'm going to share a few things with you about that first. Roderick is answering a question I asked earlier. Paper is showing backward. Okay, sorry. It's because I have my tablet flipped so that I can see comments, and so that makes everything backwards. I'll try to hook this up so you can download it, okay, and look at it the proper way. This is an awesome tool to just have in front of you all the time. Okay, so let's go back to how do you create a promoter. So the very first and most obvious way to get someone into that top quadrant, into Nirvana land, is you have to give them an amazing customer experience, okay? So I'm not gonna talk a ton here, but I think this goes without saying. You're not gonna make super fans, you're not gonna make people raving fans who wanna talk about your product if you don't have a great product. So the very first thing you wanna make sure that you're doing is your CSA needs to be strong. You need to have a good box, you need to have strong customer service, you need to take good care of your customers, you need to excite them, they need to love the weekly experience. So if there are some glitches in your process, or maybe your product's quality isn't consistent, you are not going to be able to create promoters as easily as a CSA who is kicking ass, all right, in all the elements of production and communication and so forth. So just keep that in mind, that obviously the first step in order to create a promoter is you actually have to have a great product, and all the aspects that come with it, not just, oh, I have quality vegetables. Some CSAs might have really great quality vegetables, but maybe the communication is really bad and people don't always know what's going on, and so that takes away from the experience. So, how can you surprise and delight your customers? If you have that going for you, that's sort of step one, okay? But the second thing that you need to do to create a promoter is you have to get them to share a testimonial. You have to actually get them to say, I love your farm. Now, I have talked about this several times in previous videos, trainings, but the process of having someone verbally say, oh my gosh, I love this farm, or writing it out as a Facebook post, or sending you an email to tell you, I love your product so much. Actually, a customer actually going through that process of saying something like that does something in the brain of the customer. It shifts them from one stage of the customer journey to the next. Now, I know this sounds kind of weird, but this is like based on brain science. And so when you study marketing, they actually talk about how it is actually important for you to make the customer do a testimonial. If you want them to turn into a promoter, you have to coach this testimonial to happen in some way, whether it's verbally because they share it with someone, or they write it out, or they type it out. Or you want this step to happen, and it's kind of a necessary piece in order for them to move into that stage. So they can do a testimonial on Google. You can actually coach them to do that. They can give a testimonial on your Facebook business page. I know there's a section where there's like ratings and reviews. So you could coach them to do that. You could ask them to tell someone else, to share it with a friend. And we'll talk about some, ways to do that later on specifically. They could also go on Instagram and talk about, put a picture of their box or something they made and post something. Like, all of these are examples of where they are saying something about your product that they love, all right? And the process of doing that actually does something inside the customer and turns them into a promoter. It moves them along the customer value journey, okay? It gives them practice talking about your farm, but there's actually some kind of neurological mental shift that happens. I just wanted to mention that because I didn't know that until maybe like 6 months ago. So I am actually on the prowl for testimonials. I have a strategy to try and get them to do that because I know it's for the good of the customer. They can't move in the journey until it happens, all right? So we need to be asking for the testimonial. We have to come up with a strategy that gets them to say this if we want them to move into promoter stage, all right? Now I have a whole training video all about testimonials. I'll link that up after this in the comments so you can find that. But let me just give you a few examples. So you can set aside, I recommend setting aside a very specific quote unquote season, like a few weeks in your year. Maybe you do it once or twice in the year where you officially ask people who are in your CSA to go to Google, to go to Facebook, to go to Instagram, whatever, and leave you a review. And I like to try to time that so that people do it before I'm going to be doing kind of a launch and really trying to get new people into my CSA. Because when leads come to your Facebook page to check you out or to your website and they see these testimonials, if they see that the date was like 12 months ago, it's not going to mean as much as if they see a date that's really recently. So that's why I would suggest having people go and do this like right now as you're trying to collect leads. Just be like, hey, I need like 10 people to go leave me reviews, right? Because when you have leads coming to check you out here in the next few weeks, they're going to see those recent reviews and that will just look better. So think about how there's a good time, a better time to ask for the testimonial in these specific places. So I just do this through an email. I'll do it in my private Facebook group. I'll just tell them, hey, I need you to go over here and share a testimonial. Would you be willing to do that talk? And I give them specifics about how to leave a good testimonial. And that's what you'll find in that other training. There's a difference between a good and a bad testimonial, or a helpful one, a more helpful one. So just go watch that training. I won't go into detail. Another way that I like to get testimonials is that I just look in, I'll look through my Facebook posts, because sometimes people will just share something throughout the season, and I'm like, wow, they just complimented our CSA. And so I'll take that out and lift it out and put it into a special Google Doc that's all about testimonials. But it doesn't have to happen at a set time, but you can be encouraging comments and posts that are essentially testimonials throughout the season. You can also do a survey. So I send out a survey a couple times a year, and within that survey, I have a question that's worded in such a way so that they essentially write me a testimonial, all right? So they don't know that that's maybe what they're doing, but I'm basically asking them to tell me why they love my CSA. Now, I can't take that testimonial out necessarily and put it somewhere because I don't always have a name attached to it. But sometimes that doesn't matter, because remember, I just want them to give me a testimonial. I want them to turn into a promoter, and I know they need to say the words, they need to type the words, they need to say, I believe in you, I love you. And that alone, the process of putting that in a survey may be the place where that can happen then. Another idea is to create a hashtag for like Instagram, for instance, where maybe you could call it, oh gosh, I have different ones listed here, like weekly unboxing or my kid eating veggies, or come up with something better than that. But if you create a special hashtag and then encourage them to post, then here all of a sudden they're creating a post that's talking about how they love other kids eating veggies for the first time. They could never get their kids to eat veggies. Now they have essentially talked about how much they love your farm, okay? So it doesn't always have to be a testimonial like, oh, go give me a testimonial here on Google. Sometimes you just can create posts that encourage them to rave about how you have transformed their eating habits or you have changed their lives. And again, the point of this is not necessarily to be able to take the testimonial and do something with it. You're just trying to get them to say, you've changed me, you've transformed me, you've added value to me through some mechanism here. Because by doing so, they now move into the promoter stage. They have just shown their loyalty with their words that they're with you. And once somebody says that, neurologically speaking, it's really hard for people to back off and say, I no longer like you anymore, okay? Sometimes I'll prompt people to do this kind of thing after a key event. So if we've had a really big farm event that was really successful, that was a big win for our farm, then I'll encourage them with a hashtag, or I'll just say, hey, those of you who went to this such and such farm, tell me about it. What was it like? Did you love it? Now all of a sudden they have a post where they're sharing how much they loved the event, and they've essentially just given a testimonial, and they've moved themselves into showing I'm a big fan of you. Okay. So if you have a particular farm event, or maybe you have a big time product, like we have a Thanksgiving share where we have a ton of people that come and it's a lot of hype, identify what those key moments are in your season and get them, do something that gets them to respond and engage with that. Another way to get them to make a testimonial is to just send an email on a random week and ask them a question and to send you a reply. Like you could say something like, hey, just share with me, what's one big surprise or one big takeaway that you've had from your CSA season so far, or from this week? What was something that you really loved? Okay, so you're prompting them with a question. They're going to respond back to you. You're going to be the one that gets it. You don't necessarily have to stick it all over the place on a sales page. All you want is for them to physically take the time to type out or say, this is why I like you, right? That's an important step in the customer journey. Okay, I hope I've made that clear. You're not always going to use this stuff to actually put as a testimonial somewhere. You're just trying to get them to do it so that this shift happens in their mind, okay? All right, the third thing, how do you create a promoter? The third step is I want you to consider creating a private Facebook group if you haven't done that already. So I have one just for my CSA members, and it's kind of my insiders group. Do any of you guys do this already? I think Laura, you have one. I know you have one. Facebook groups are amazing because this is kind of where people are really engaging a lot right now on Facebook. And I can go in there and I can talk to them in a more intimate way than I can on my business page. In fact, I don't really do a ton on my business page anymore like I used to. I do most of my conversation with my people. And so I can engage one-on-one in there. I can message somebody, I can tag, I can respond, and there's a sense of intimacy and relationship that happens when you're communicating with one another in a group like that. So it makes them feel special, they feel noticed, the engagement is higher, the group feels smaller than on the big business page. And then the creation of the content, like I create content that's really focused on their specific needs, and they can tell that. So they just feel taken care of. Hey Lynn, good to see you, glad you're here. And so it just grows that relationship. So if you can create a private Facebook group, I feel like you're more likely to build promoters that way. You'll be able to identify some of your key people that are engaging a lot. You'll be able to coach people who are starting to engage a little bit more and turn them into promoters, because you'll be able to talk one-on-one with them or appreciate them or say, thank you for sharing. So glad you shared that piece of wisdom with so-and-so. I need all of you guys to help me, run this group. So there's little things that you can do that make them feel noticed and appreciated and make it more likely to move. So I want you to remember that the customer value journey, right? This is kind of like a dating relationship. And so it takes time to develop someone. It takes time to move someone through that whole journey and get them up into that top quadrant. And you have to connect with them. You have to build relationship, converse, disclose things about yourself, let them disclose things about themselves in order for that to happen. You can't just get married. You can't just expect them to be, loyal forever. It doesn't happen that way. So private Facebook groups are a great way if you have a strategy within that group for moving people along. They're a great way to get people into that promoter phase. Lori, you said something. I designed our mailer using what I learned from building a story brand. Yes, sorting was a hassle, but I felt we had tapped out our Facebook reach and needed to reach non-Facebook users. Hugely successful, paid for itself. Awesome, cool. Thanks for sharing that, Lori. Okay, the fourth tip about how do you create a promoter. I have to look back at my notes. I'm like, what am I on again? The fourth tip is just creating something new. Create something new within your CSA brand. Every year I try to ask myself, what can I add this year? What new layer can I add that's different from last year? Because I have found that new, I almost feel like this could be a mathematical equation. New equals momentum. If you want momentum for your brand, for your business, do something new, right? I mean, think about it. Whenever, in any organization that I've been a part of, whenever there's a new product release or a new event at school for the first time, like the daddy-daughter dance, there was all of this hype last year because it was never been done before. And the second year they did it, it was a little less popular. But think about what can I do to inject something new into my CSA? So a great example of this for us was a couple of years ago, our roadmap to CSA success. I've talked about that a ton. But it created a lot of energy, a lot of buzz, because before the first 8 years, we had just kind of always done the same thing. We had, the box every week, and sometimes we added a different kind of vegetable on a particular year, and we tried to switch out farm events a little bit, but for the most part, we sort of had a rhythm and a routine. And then this one year, I come in all gangbusters with this new content creation, and people were like, whoa, and it just created this buzz and this excitement. And I was just getting emails by, tens, like 10 emails a week. Like, I don't know what you're doing, but it is so energizing this year. I love all this stuff you're doing. It's just amazing. Thank you for going above and beyond. Okay, so I know that I created a bunch of promoters last year just by adding that new element. And so that's been a challenge for me this year. It's like, okay, well, what's the new element going to be this year? I can't just teach the same stuff that I did last year. I have to keep adding new aspects. So just be asking yourself, what can I do this year that will create momentum, that will create buzz and excitement? Because that is a way to turn people into promoters. They're going to get excited about something. They're going to notice a new aspect of it. They're going to get jazzed about it. And now they're ready to talk you up because, wow, this is cool. I like what she just added. Okay. So now I'm going to talk to you about how do you leverage your brand ambassadors. So that was just sort of like, what are some things that you need to do to turn them into that, to get them into that category, into that phase of the customer value journey. But once they're there, how do you leverage those basic users, those basic promoters? Remember, you have your super users who probably don't need a lot of coaching. They're just going to talk you up. But there's a whole bunch of people, once they get up there, that they're not really sure how to help you. They'd be more than happy to talk you up, but give me some ideas of what I can do, okay? So my first tip here is to give those promoters a tool. Give them a tool. And this is where you have to get strategic. You have to kind of spend 10, 20 minutes one day and just come up with a list. And I'm going to go through some of them right now. You can copy these down and see if one or two of them resonate with you. These ideas actually came from that post that I put out last week where I asked people to share what they do. So I'm going to share some ideas that I do, but I'm also going to add things from our membership here within our own group. So Landis Spickerman says that she includes, Landis, I'm not sure if this is a boy or a girl. I'm thinking it's a girl, sorry. We include in the last CSA box of the season a postcard that CSAers can give to someone else. And it's a $10 off for both parties involved. So I love this idea. This is actually something that I have done in the past as well. And I love that Landis is timing it to give it out in the last week. I would even challenge you, Landis, to do it a little bit earlier, maybe like 3 weeks before the end of the season, that you start passing that out to people. So the timing of that is important. It makes no sense to give them a tool right before you start CSA and you're pretty much sold out, right? So those are going to get filed away and people are going to forget about it. So you want to give it to people at the height of the season when there's still a lot of energy, the momentum is still strong for the CSA, not when they're getting sick of it, right? And kind of right before your early bird push. And what I like to do is say, hey, pass this out to your friends and they can have access to the early bird pricing essentially, right? If they're getting that $10 off. So that's a really great suggestion, Landis. I really love that one. And I'm pretty sure that's pretty common. Another idea was vacation. So this is something that I do and has worked really well. If somebody is going on vacation for a particular week or two during the CSA season, I train and coach my members frequently. I bring it up quite a bit. I say, hey, if you're going to go on a vacation, why don't you share your box with someone that you think might enjoy CSA? So I say, hey, you want to talk about my farm? Well, here's a great way. When you go away, tell your friend to be your substitute to come pick it up and they can enjoy your box for the week. Instead of just having it donated, have them enjoy it. And then when they come and get their box, something new that I'm going to do this year, I'm not just going to give them a box, I'm going to have a goodie bag for them. Okay, so not only are they going to get this cool weekly experience of vegetables, but they're going to get a bonus goodie bag from the farmer. And I'm hoping that word will get back to their friend that let them borrow the box for the week, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, and I got this. And so then that friend who invited them is going to say, Corinna takes care of my people. And she's more likely to do that, again, because she knows that I went above and beyond and tried to surprise and delight this person with a really great experience. Okay, so those are things that encourage that behavior to happen again. So that would be another idea, is to just train your people to do that when there's vacations for them. Chester Carrot, who's actually not Chester Carrot, I won't tell you her real name, but I love that. She says, we have a referral rewards program where customers earn a free week of CSA for every referral they get. So that is another way you could go about it. Rose Farah says, we provide a gift certificate for each referral. And then I wanted to spin off this idea of gift certificates because I tried this 3 years ago and I got really good results. I haven't done it since, but it was at the end of kind of middle of November is when I began to think about this. I send a Christmas card to all my CSA members. And what I did was I created a beautiful little postcard size gift certificate. It was essentially, it looks like a postcard, right? But it was a gift certificate for $10 off. And I put 2 of them in each of these Christmas cards, and I had a letter that was in there too. And the letter explained that these are gift certificates not for you as a CSA member, but for a friend. So it was a way for them, and I kind of encouraged them, give this away as a present for Christmas to some of your friends. So I was basically giving them free stuff to make them look good, right? So they could give a present to someone and not have to pay. So the way that the postcard was worded, it kind of made it look like, you could only use it for stuff for our CSA. So it was essentially a coupon, but I worded it as a gift certificate. I got really great response from that. And I had people who were like, oh my God, you just gave me a present to give to other people. That was so awesome. So sometimes if you don't know what to give people as a present, and then you get this thing from your farmer who's like, here, I'm giving you a present to give to a friend, another foodie friend. That made a really cool impression. So the wording on that was a little tricky, but that is another kind of concept of the gift certificate. Again, the timing of it was important too. I had to make sure that they got it before December 2nd, because if they're giving presents out for Christmas, I wanted them to have it before Christmas, well before Christmas. Okay, Emily Dowling has a couple of suggestions. She says, we've got an invite a friend program where they get a dozen eggs if their friend joins. Plus, the new person and the inviter get put into a drawing for a $50 gift certificate. So kind of this raffle concept. I really like that as well. And Emily Dowling is already sold out her CSA, and she's 8 weeks ahead of where she was last year, sold out 8 weeks earlier. So this worked for her really well. Emily also had another idea. She said, invite them to a new CSA mini course. So she's created an email drip campaign, which is essentially an email course all about CSA. And so that becomes a good way for people to invite friends to learn more. So she has created this mechanism, a mini course, email course, and she makes sure her members know about it, so that, and then she has a way for people to easily find that and subscribe to it, right? So she might share that link to the opt-in page that gets you the mini course. And so she can tell her CSA customers, hey, I have a place you can send people if they want to learn more about CSA. Here's the link, okay? And then people can share that. Another really great online strategy. Margot Hanson-Pierre said, I tell people to leave a Google or Facebook review, and then share our flyers on Facebook too. So she actually has a way for them to share that through Facebook, okay? That's a really great kind of basic strategy that we talked about earlier, but literally just having to tell them, hey, go put a Google review up, go put a Facebook review up. Because it doesn't always occur to people that that's helpful. Rick Dalen says he uses email. He sends an email asking his CSA members to forward that email to friends and family that they think might be interested, all right? And he actually gives very specific, simple ideas within that email for how they can do it. So he'll say things like, you could leave a review, you could share on Facebook, you could share a recent Facebook post. So he tries to give like a top 5 list of ways that you can help me talk about my farm. He doesn't just say, hey, let people know about our CSA. He actually gives very specific bullet points, ways that they can do it. So that's another way to use email and specify what those things are. So you could take a bunch of these ideas and stick them all in one email. Debbie Wickham says we sell sample shares at a discount for our members to give as gifts. I really like this idea. So this is just something people can buy like one time, like so you can try out one box, but you still have to pay for it, but it's a way for people to give it a shot. I created, I think I've shared before in another video all about the sampler share program, but I actually have a product called the Sampler Share, which is a 4-week product, which also gets them access to my private Facebook group. So they start seeing all the people in my group, they meet that community, they see the buzz of the training that's going on in there, and that gets them hopefully kind of excited, and they're like, oh, I want to be in that next year. So it's another way to pull people in to trial something out. Remember that not everyone is ready to get married, right? They're not ready to just jump into this really big commitment. So coming up with these ideas that are a little less risky and that introduce your leads to your brand more slowly might not be a bad idea. And so creating even a mechanism that gets them, maybe not even into your CSA, but maybe just coming to your farmer's market stand to try your vegetables out in the first place. You know, maybe it's like super top of funnel. And then you eventually follow up and start selling them on the CSA, 6 months later. Couple more ideas were in the group. Invite your friend to come with you to a farm event and introduce them to you and your actual farm. I love this. In fact, I noticed probably 5 years ago that if my customers come to my farm for a farm event, my retention rate on those people is incredibly high. So it's almost like I know if I can get my people to come to my farm, they'll probably stay with me. So that suddenly made it really important for me. I got real strategic about, I need to create events. I need to get people here because I know if I get them here, they'll stay with me. So there's something about coming to a farm and seeing the place and meeting the farmer that really helps. Brad Law had a really great concept here. He said, sometimes you just have to give people something to talk about. So he just points out the very obvious, but not so obvious strategy of post an engaging post on Facebook. He said, on July 22nd, 2017, we planted a double crop of sweet corn. He posted pictures on Facebook that day, and it helped sell patch 2 to 7 of sweet corn. Okay, so sometimes just putting up a post makes people aware of something really cool that's happening, will make people more aware and willing to talk about it and share it. So content creation is also just a really huge lever that you have in your toolkit. So that's a big part of my strategy. I'm always trying to think of what can I teach people, how can I teach people how to use their food, what are some storage tips. I have a Back 40 documentary series that I'm doing every 2 weeks. It's like a 5-minute video and I'm just stacking them on top of each other in YouTube. But my goal there is really just to get people to start seeing a regular video from us. I'm not selling anything, I'm just showing the story of our farm. And after people see enough of those, then I'm going to be top of mind when they suddenly one day decide they want to have some organic vegetables. Who's the farm they're going to think of first? The one that's been doing consistent content creation and getting in their Facebook feed for the last 6 months, right? So just giving people something to talk about is another strategy. Michelle Weiler from talks about how Local Roots NYC provides text language copy a tearaway flyer, a discount, etc., to motivate members to spread the word. So this is an actual farm that has the tool all ready to go. They actually say, here is the text that you can copy and paste to share with your friends. Here is the tearaway flyer right here at our pickup site. Take one right now. Okay, so they make it super, super easy, and you can just go to their website even and find it apparently, and just cut and paste it. And then another idea was to create a 1 week in the season where you maybe, like I came up with a hashtag, share the love CSA challenge. So where you challenge all your members for 1 week in the year where you just get really focused on it. And you're like, okay, members, I want you to talk about your CSA box with one person, and then build a lot of hype around it, provide tools, kind of like we just mentioned with Michelle, give them text message, give them flyers, but just make it a focus for like 1 or 2 weeks and give it a hashtag, a certain challenge, and just talk about it all the time so that they have this goal, this personal goal. I'm going to find one person, just one person that I can talk to about it. Okay. And then maybe even if you can set a goal, or you can find a way to get, have people report on whether they did it or not, to keep track of how, the results are. You could reward your highest affiliate. I have no idea how you would track that. I hadn't really thought that through, but this was an idea that I'm thinking about, where there's just a big strategy push. You can also create a webinar. Now, I don't do webinars yet, but it's something that's on my radar. If I feel like I need help finding customers down the road, a webinar is an option, and you could have send members a referral, a link to that webinar so they can pass that on to people. You could also do a 30-day private Facebook group that's only a pop-up group. It only exists for 30 days. I did that 1 year, and I had my CSA customers send their referrals into that group. I was like, hey, I'm going to take really good care of them. I'm going to teach them all about CSA. So if you know someone who's on the fence or is interested, have them join this private Facebook group for 30 days, and they can learn all about it during that period, and then it's going to go away. Okay, so that was another idea. So if you have other ideas that I haven't mentioned, post them here in the comments, and we'll have a kind of a running list of other things, but I thought these were a really good list to start with. The second point that I want to make about how to leverage those brand ambassadors once you have them in that quadrant in the customer value journey. Reward the people who share your brand. Reward them. Come up with a reward system. So let your community know that you value customers who are talking you up by rewarding this behavior, all right? And there's this phrase that I've learned from just various leadership mentors that I follow, and it's this: what gets rewarded gets repeated, right? What gets rewarded gets repeated. We see that as a principle in life over and over again. People like to be rewarded, and when they see other people being rewarded for something, they're gonna do it too. So if you have someone, for instance, who tags somebody else after you put up a post on Facebook about your product, and you see them tag someone, keep track of those people who are recommending you, who are referring you. And then send out a Facebook post, maybe every week, every 2 weeks. You could hashtag it brand ambassadors. And you basically, in the post copy, say thank you to the people who have been talking you up, who have been tagging other people. And you can then put those people's names, you can tag those people who have been referring you. And essentially, you've just done a huge public thank you for that kind of behavior. So that's one idea. You could do, like we do, $10 off for every person that you recommend to our CSA that actually sticks and ends up joining. I give my referrers $10. I give them market bucks that they can use in our online store. And the one catch is that the person has to actually mention their name during the sign-up process. So that means you have to build in a step within the sign-up process so that you can capture who those people are. I appreciate these people also in very specific ways. I write handwritten notes and send them through the mail with a stamp on them. So for my top referrers, I know who they are, and I write thank you notes to my super users. And I'm really good about how I write the thank you note. I don't just write a sentence or two. I go into detail about how that behavior is helping my farm specifically. So the longer you can write that thank you note, the better. Now remember, these are your super users, right? The ones who are just doing a really awesome job. So it's not going to be millions and millions of thank you notes. But this is a discipline that I build in. If I see a behavior I love, I take the time to write a note. And I promise you that when you do that even once, they're going to do it again, okay? I also take care of those people. So I will occasionally throw in a little bonus veggie when I see them at the farmer's market. They'll buy extra stuff for me, and I'm like, I don't charge them for half of it. I don't even charge them for. And I'll say, hey, you're just so good at promoting us, so I'm gonna cover 50% of this today. So I don't just give them freebies. I explain to them why they're getting the freebie from me, so that they know that that's the behavior I'm rewarding. And then again, this year, I just told you I'm going to experiment with this gift bag concept for anybody that comes in as a substitute for someone, and I'm going to reward that behavior. I'm basically going to give something, a surprise and delight this first timer, so that the person who referred them will feel that reward. They'll be like, wow, you just took care of my friend and you made me look good. That's going to be the reward that the referrer will feel. That they look good promoting something that's really valuable. Okay. I also want to just mention here that you need to figure out a way to track your super users, okay? So that you can reward them and lift them up. So figure out, create a way to find out how new people found out about your farm. So whether you put that in a survey or in the sign-up process, like we use Member Assembler, and you can ask questions in the process where you can find out who referred you. That's one of my questions, but I'm actually not going to be with Member Assembler for too much longer. You can put it in your Facebook group. So my private Facebook group has the possibility where you can ask people that question, who referred you. There's 3 questions that you can ask before they join a private Facebook group. So that's going to be one of my 3 questions next year. And then I'll just have to keep track of that myself and make sure that those people, every time they get mentioned, they get a little tick mark next to their name, and they're going to get $10 off in their online store. You can also ask for that information through a drip email sequence. So if you have a welcome sequence after someone signs up, one of those emails could have, as its one call to action, it could be, how did you find out about our farm? Was there someone who referred you? Because if so, tell me who it was. And that's all you ask them to do. So that could be another way that you could capture that information. If you use Google Forms for sign up, that could be one of your questions in the Google form process. And I also wrote down customer interviews. If you have a pattern of doing interviewing your avatars, that's also something that I would stick in there. Okay, the third thing I want to talk about here for how to leverage your brand ambassadors is you need to teach your brand ambassadors the cues to look for, the triggers. So how do you help your promoters create a habit of promoting? And there's a book that I want to reference here where I've gotten this idea from. It's called The Power of Habit. It's by Charles Duhigg. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. D-U-H-I-G-G. And it's a best-selling book. I first heard about this from a pastor, actually, that I follow, Andy Stanley. And he does a lot of leadership podcasts and leadership trainings. And the premise of this book, which he was teaching on, was that Charles Duhigg talks about the power of habit and how the brain creates habits to simplify our daily activities, right? If we had to consciously decide to do absolutely everything that we do every day from scratch, it would be overwhelming, and our brain would just, fry. It would like burn so many brain cells. So the brain has adapted and come up with these this concept of habits, these routines and rituals to just simplify and automate certain behaviors. Okay, so in this book, he breaks down like how habits form and how you can break a habit and create a new habit and so forth. And it kind of breaks down, stay with me here, I'm going somewhere with this. It breaks down into kind of 3 pieces. There's a cue, there's some kind of a trigger that causes the habit or the behavior that you want people to do to happen. Then there's the actual behavior itself. There's the habit that you want them to do, the action you want them to do, the routine that's been completely memorized. It just kind of operates more or less automatically because that trigger hits. And then the third important piece is that there is a reward that reinforces the habit. So he argues in this book that if you want to create a habit in someone, or if you want to say, suddenly become really passionate about exercising, like you have to, or stop eating so much bad food, you have to have these 3 things in place. You have to have a trigger, you have to have the habit, the behavior itself, and you have to have a reward. So I first heard about this concept from Andy Stanley, and what he was doing, he was using this principle of how habits form to try and teach and train his congregation, which is this massive church, to invite people to church with them. And so that was the desired habit. He wanted people to invite people. Now, I used to be a youth minister, okay, so I was always very passionate about this too. How do we get people to want to even invite or remember to invite people? And so he came up with 3 triggers. He said, if you hear somebody say, I'm new here, I just moved into the area, I don't know what's going on. Or if you hear someone talk about how things aren't going very well in my life, or they start telling a sob story, or they're just having a tough time, okay? Or I've got new kids, I just, a major life event, I just had a ton of kids, and that's usually kind of when parents often think about teaching the faith to their children, okay? So he identified 3 cues, 3 triggers that he thought would cause someone to maybe think about coming to church. So he taught these triggers to his congregation, and he didn't just teach them once. He teaches them over and over again, periodically throughout the years, the church year. He'll bring them up again, and he'll be like, hey, you know what? We want you to be inviting friends. Listen, I know it's hard to remember to do that. Here's what's going to help you. If you hear one of these 3 things, one of these 3 phrases said by somebody, I'm new here, things aren't going well, I just had a baby, or I just started having kids. That should be the trigger for you to find a way to invite them to church, okay? And so I just thought I bring up this story because this has been intriguing me, and I'm trying to think of what would that look like for a CSA farm, okay? So, if we can identify the behavior or habit that we want to occur again and again, and then if we can identify the cues, the triggers that we can teach to our people, so that happens, so that behavior will happen for them. So let me give you an example of what I thought of, how I think this is going to work. So I have figured out the trigger that I'm going to teach my new members or my customers is this. When they hear the phrase from one of their friends, I'm sorry, not from one of their friends, when they have to go on vacation for the summer, and they're realizing, oh, I'm not going to be able to pick my box. That should be the trigger that makes them think, I want to ask somebody else to try my box, okay? So for me, that's the trigger or the cue that I've identified. I'm looking for other ones, but that's the one I've identified, and I'm going to train them. When you think about going on vacation, I want you to think about, how can I share my box with someone? And then I'll take care of the rest. I'm going to take good care of them with a goodie bag and make sure they have a good experience. But that is the cue, and then the behavior is I'm going to invite someone to try the CSA, okay? And then the reward that's going to happen is that goodie bag and how it's going to reflect well on their friend, because I've just taken care of their friend, and their friend's going to be like, wow, you just made me look really good. Okay, so that was really long-winded, but I hope you get the concept. One of the things that I think really helps you leverage, if you can leverage, you can help your referrers really do their job well. If you can identify this cue, this trigger, figure out a trigger, and then teach it to them, beat that drum again and again and again, so that they know, the 1 or 2 things that they need to look for that'll cause them to automatically think, oh, I need to invite this person to join my CSA or try my CSA, okay? All right. Ultimately, as I wrap up here, you have to have a good product for people to want to refer it. I need to go back to that because that's really, really important, because none of this is going to work if your product isn't great, if there's a piece that's misfiring in your CSA engine. So if people aren't referring right now, if you've been doing CSA for 3 or 4 years and you don't have an army of referrers, promoters, then you need to ask yourself these 2 questions. Number 1, have I not provided that surprise and delight customer experience? Is there something broken within your CSA experience? Because that's probably step 1. You need to fix that, right? Or you need to make something new that creates that momentum and excitement. But the second question that you can ask yourself is, am I making it easy to refer? Am I giving my people tools so that they know what to do? Am I teaching them the triggers and the cues? Okay, so those are kind of the 2 questions to ask if you don't have this referral process happening. It may be that number 1, your product isn't great enough yet, or number 2, that you just haven't built the strategy. You haven't thought through the tools that you can do. Once you build the tools, this will start happening for you more consistently. So I want you to try to absorb all this information, and I just want you to pick one strategy this year, one thing from this training that might stimulate your super users or even your just basic promoter users to talk about you, okay? If you can think of 2 things and they're easy, low-hanging fruit to implement, great, but just try to pick at least one and put this into your marketing strategy. This is a long-term play. You're not going to see results from this immediately, but if you don't put it into position, you're missing out. You're missing out money on the table that you're not going to get. And this is an easy way to use the free marketing that's waiting for you to tap into. So come up with a strategy. All right, next week, I will be in Nashville for my Story Brand Live workshop that I'm going to. Super excited. If I have the ability, I will pop in for a very brief 5-10 minute hello and maybe share like one little nugget that I've learned there. But I'm kind of shifting my content creation for you guys here as we move into the growing season. I'm going to be just pushing it. I'll still be doing something once a week, but it's going to be a very short 5 to 10 minute nugget where it's like one concept that I'm going to kind of just encourage you with. So let me know if you have any comments on this video or any questions, and I will take a look at them real quick. I don't see anybody typing anything just yet on my tablet. Lori says, good stuff, thanks. Thanks, Lori, for sticking around. I appreciate it. This is going to be my last super long training for a while, I think, but glad you guys were here, and I'll see you definitely in a couple weeks, hopefully next weekend briefly too. Take care, guys. Bye.